Right, I don't know exactly where we are with this, with the parts and segments of video on this Greco, because I was going to do a really big part 3, which I had done, but I'm not sure if I'm doing that now. So this was going to be the beginning of part 4, but again, I'm not sure. So I'll squeeze it in wherever I think it needs to go. And if I edit what was going to be part 3, because I did a 30-minute section just on leveling my frets. If I decide to edit that and shorten it, which I probably will do, this will still be in part 3. But anyway, let me explain where we are right now. Frets beveled, levelled, crowned, and all ready for polishing. Absolutely brilliant. You can see I've took all the tape off, I've refitted the freeway, blah 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 blah. I've got the pickup back where it needs to be. Three-way's all in there. The electrics, check them, they're fantastic. The electrics in it are beautiful. CTS pots, orange drop caps, and beautiful wiring. But I'm coming on to fitting the nut, and this is where we're having a little problem. Because the nut slot or nut cavity is not straight, it's not level, and it's got a big chunk missing. Don't know if you can see it there. It's down this side. So I've decided I'm going to do is, I'm going to fill this with epoxy. In fact, I'm not going to do it just that. I'm going to fill that little bit with epoxy, but I'm also going to fit the nut at the same time, super gluing the nut in at the back, and I'm going to have a tiny gap between the back of the nut and the front of the fingerboard, and I'm going to fill that with rosewood dust again and some epoxy or some super glue. I'm not sure which yet. I mean, if I put this right up to that side, I'm going to have a gap at the back. I'll have a gap here. If I put it further to the back, it's going to sit straighter, but there's going to be a small gap between the nut and the fingerboard. I would ideally have it right up to the fingerboard, but I can't get it to sit straight enough. I might just bang some epoxy in there, get some super glue on the end and just try and get it in. But I'm not sure how that's going to work. I think I would prefer to just about knock back a little. How much of a gap we're going to have in there? It's such a tiny gap. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do about that. I'm going to get it fitted. Ideally, I will want it right up to the fingerboard, and I don't know how I'm going to get it right up to the fingerboard unless I get a business card. That might be an idea. If I grab a business card, I'm thinking this might work. If I get some glue in there and stick a business card behind here in this small gap, that will push it right up. That's going to work. That will work. That's what I'm going to do, I think. If not a business card, I get a feeler gauge in there. I'm going to get some super glue in there. Problem is, this nut is not sitting flush because it's not a 90-degree cut, which is a shame. Okay, I don't know what I'm going to do. I would be inclined to go with epoxy. I'm going to mix up some epoxy. I'm going to epoxy that nut in. I'm not using any wood dust or anything. I'm just going to get some epoxy on there. I've taped all around the area, so if we get any spillage, I'm going to be alright. I'm going to get some epoxy and I'm going to glue that in, and I will get a feeler gauge at the back of that just to hold it in tight. There's no other way around it. I'll cut the nut with it on the guitar. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to film this because I'm running short of time tonight, so I'm going to get cracking. So this wonderful 1984 Greco Les Paul Custom is ready now to be restrung. I've had some strings on it, I've had it all set up. The nut, I've just finished cutting the nut properly. Got some nice slots in there. The grooves are cut really nice, the nut fits really well. We had to use a little bit of trickery to get that nut in because it wasn't quite as wide as the slot. So what I did was I got a feeler gauge behind it as I glued it in, and I glued it in with epoxy to give it a really firm base, because the base or the shelf it was sat on wasn't perfectly level, and I didn't want to be carving chunks out of the neck itself. You'll see there are now 2 holes at this end where the truss rod cover goes, because I've got a truss rod cover to go on there. It's not the correct one. You could have stuck a Gibson on there, but I did have an old Heritage one knocking about that I'd slightly modified, so that's going to go on there. Once I've got a truss rod set, the truss rod is just about set. I'm going to put on a set of Diodario 1046 strings. We're going to tune this to standard tuning, but a semitone flat. We're going to go to, yeah, we call it E flat or D sharp, whichever way you want to look at it. Either will do. The guitar is absolutely fine fettle. If you remember when it did come in, we could get no relief in that neck, so I've had to bend the neck using heat. Using steam, plenty of heat in there, and have it clamped over a couple of days. we managed to get that all sorted out. So we've got some bend in the neck, not a lot, but enough, absolutely enough there. We re-radiused the whole board as well because there was a slight, it wasn't perfectly level anyway. We needed to get some material off there, but it's re-radiused. We're sitting somewhere between 10 and 12, maybe a little bit closer to the 10 side than you normally like, just probably just under 11. But it is all pretty good. So all that remains to be done now is I need to get some strings on there. A couple of little areas in the binding I need to just touch up with a little bit of filler, just so you can't see the slots that were cut in there. The actual, when I was cutting the slots for the frets, a knife, my cutter slipped and cut through in a couple of areas. But once that's filled in, we'll get a bit of epoxy in there, coloured epoxy. You won't know the difference at all. In fact, if I had not mentioned it, you would not even know it had been done. So that's what I'm going to do. Once that's all done, I will come back and I will show you the final update on this wonderful guitar. Good thing about this guitar, I actually do have a Les Paul 1980 Les Paul Custom in as well to compare it with, and I tell you what, there's nothing between them. They're both excellent guitars, but if you want to save yourself some money, you can go and pick one of these Grecos up for about, what are you looking at, £600–700 if you look around, whereas a Gibson Custom is going to cost you about 2,000 quid, isn't it? So weigh it up, you know what I mean? Beautiful guitar. Anyway, I will be back soon. And here we are with this Greco, a 1984 Mint Collection Greco Custom Les Paul. What a stunning guitar. Let's recap what we've done to this. Came in, needed a refret, we knew that anyway, but the big problem was the neck was dead straight. With the truss rod even loosened off, the neck was dead straight. In fact, it had a tiny bit of backbone in it, so we needed to get some relief into the neck. There's one way, well, the only way we could really do that was to bend the neck under tension, clamped up, get an arc in the neck, and by doing that we'd get a tighter clamp in the middle, and we'd move it a couple of areas over a couple of days and clamp it. That didn't work, so we needed to then do that with heat. Same process but with heat. And by the way we got heat into it is we get a steel rod or an aluminium strip of metal. Well, I've got one behind me right now on the bench being bent again, a Gibson. And once we've done that, we clamp it in the middle, then we clamp it and we clamp the arc in there and we heat the steel rod or the aluminium rod, whatever it is, or the sheet or the strip of metal, by using, what I do is I get a clothes iron, old clothes iron, £4 or £5 jobby from Asda or whatever it was, just put it on full heat and rest it on the metal, and what that does is it opens the pores of the wood and it bends the wood into shape. You don't want to put a massive arc in there. If you want 1mm relief, I bend it a couple of millimetres, you know, kind of like that, because it is going to spring back. But we managed to do that. We got some relief in there, so we got that fixed. Once that was done, it was just a matter of refretting the guitar, working inside the binding. I'm going to show you the frets as they are. You may pause and zoom in and have a look at that. I've just finished cutting the nut. The nut is really low. See if I can get to this angle without knocking anything. That's just knocked the stand, camera stand, very lightweight, cause no damage. And there you go, there's a nut just cut. I also fashioned a truss rod. Well, this is off an old heritage type guitar. What heritage guitar? Not a heritage, heritage, yeah, heritage guitar. That was it. I was knocking a few of these up and I got one spare. The frets look amazing. We've got nice bevel on the edges there. A couple of cosmetic things I need to do. There's one slot I need to fill in here where I cut through the binding by accident with my saw. I mean, I could leave it, it's really not going to cause any problem at all. I could just touch it up with a little bit of paint or whatever. But I'm going to fill it because I've got one to fill on a Gibson anyway. So that is it. It's been a big job. It wasn't cheap. But I'm sure the owner is going to be absolutely delighted with this. It looks fantastic, it plays fantastic. I'm not going to plug it in and play it on this video. That privilege is down to the owner. You'll see also that when I refretted it, I had to re-radius the fingerboard, which I did. I filled in all the chips because we got quite a bit of chipping. You always do get chipping. I removed the nibs. You always do get chipping anyway when you're pulling frets out from one of these type, because I couldn't work around the nibs. So as I pulled them out, I chipped. So I had to fill in. It's had a lot of work, and I know it's been an expensive job for the owner, but it's had more work than has been charged for. It's had quite a few more hours than it normally would. that comes in at that price. I've cut the nut by hand. It is a Graphtec nut. It is epoxied in. I think this looks absolutely wonderful. It really is a good looking guitar, and it's an amazing sounding guitar. I've just had it plugged in and playing. I think that privilege should belong to the owner, but I might just give you a little bit of a clean sound. I'll bang this on clean, overdrive off, because that privilege of playing this guitar for the first time should really go to the owner, I think. But it does sound absolutely beautiful. Put it on the middle pickup, put it middle position, so it's just both pickups on. Just a wonderful guitar. Could do with stretching my strings in just a little bit more. I've given one stretch. It's in tune. It's tuned into standard tuning, E flat. What a beautiful guitar. I'm not going to play any more than that. I will plug it in on the distortion channel in a moment, and I'll rip out some metal and have a little go on it, and then I'll put it back in its case. It is all ready to go. What an absolutely stunning guitar. You can pick these up for round about 700 quid, I believe. If you shop around, I think that's, I'm not saying it's expensive, but this, I know the owner of this guitar didn't pay 700 quid for this one. Paid quite a bit less, so he's done really, really well. What an absolute fantastic guitar. Lovely piece of wood there, look. Just brilliant. So that's it. This one is all done. It's been a long process. It's had a lot of work, but this is part of a triplet of guitars that my friend Mike Newman is going to pick up, because I've done is Gibson Custom Les Paul, pretty much similar to this, very similar to this. It's like the Gibson version of this guitar, or this is like the Greco version of a Gibson Custom. It's got that one to pick up, and it's also got an Ibanez. The Gibson had the same job as this. It had a complete refret. That had an ebony board, so that was a lot of work. And he also bought an Ibanez GRG 170DX, which is a fabulous guitar, which I replaced 3 frets. And did a setup there for him. So this is it. This one belongs to a guy called Tony, who I met through Mike Newman. It's a wonderful guitar. I know he's anxious to get it back. I've had this quite a long time, but I'm sure he's going to enjoy it. Fabulous guitar. If I could find one like this in this colour at a reasonable price, I would buy it. That's how much I rate these guitars. Right up there with a comparative Gibson. An absolutely beautiful guitar. It's been a pleasure to work on this. It is going to be a pleasure to give it back and to see the guy's reaction and what he thinks and how much he's going to enjoy this. So, another project finished. This is me, Victor Christian, from fretfriend.co.uk. I've also got a page on Facebook, facebook.com/NG17. That's facebook.com/NGONESEVEN. You can also check me out on YouTube. My YouTube channel is on the Facebook page. You can check me at fretfriend.co.uk. And that is it. Another one finished. So this is Victor Christian signing off on this particular project. So as always, be good to each other, and I will see you soon.